Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, for many anxious citizens, the problem of our time is not just that so many challenging things are happening in the world, but that so much disinformation is spread about them. How can we even have a proper conversation about things going wrong when so many people seem intent on dividing and confusing us with falsehoods? This is, in reality, an understandable mashup of connected concerns. Conspiracy theories on social media, falsehoods propagated by politicians, and the worries about clever targeting techniques by people like Cambridge Analytica. But of late, it's the geopolitical nonsense that's been at the fore, deliberate falsehoods spread by nations, one nation in particular, about chemical attacks or whatever. These are designed to breed distrust. Propaganda is hardly new, but it does feel like the game has changed. Gabriel Gatehouse has been trying to work out the new rules.
Hello, welcome to a world of total relativism. This is a world with as many realities as there are points of view. In this game, seeing and believing have switched places. It may look confusing at first, but don't worry, sit down, relax. You might like it here, then again, you might not. On the 7th of April, pictures emerged that appeared to show children in Douma, the suburb of Damascus, being treated after a chemical attack. The Syrian government has used chemical weapons in the past. The view in the West was clear. It looked like they'd done it again.
If they are found to be responsible, the regime and its backers, including Russia, must be held to account.
But from Moscow, things looked very different indeed.
Более того, у нас есть неопровержимые данные о том, что это была постановка очередная. И к этой постановке приложили руку спецслужбы одного государства, которое сейчас рвется быть в первых рядах русофобской кампании.
That certain country, Russian officials made clear, is Britain. In war, there are often disagreements over who's responsible for an attack. But this is different.
The narrative has evolved over time, so as soon as the attacks were reported, you saw well-known pro-Kremlin and pro-Assad internet trolls advancing the narrative that this was a genuine attack but had been committed by the rebels. But then quickly you had more official sources, so particularly the Russian Foreign Ministry and the Russian Defense Ministry, saying the whole story is a fake, the images are a fake, the videos are fake, the story is a provocation.
In the real world, this is a binary situation. Either there was a chemical attack or there wasn't. On the ground, a team of international experts is checking. But meanwhile, in the world of information warfare, the Russians are on the offensive.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Moscow's chief diplomat in London has been holding marathon press briefings, covering topics from Syria.
The white helmets are supported by the British government. They're giving them money. And they are famous for staging fake chemical attacks.
To Salisbury.
We get the impression that the British government is deliberately pursuing the policy of destroying all possible evidence.
To a multimedia presentation on Iraq.
My judgment as Prime Minister is that this threat is real, growing, and of an entirely different nature to any conventional threat to our security that Britain has faced before.
The programme in the form that we thought it was did not exist in the way that we thought, so I can apologise for that.
Russia makes no secret of the fact that it believes it's fighting an information war. Those who study this campaign say Moscow is using a mixture of methods to produce a potent propaganda cocktail.
You have state-controlled sites, you have the state bureaucracy, you have state diplomats, you have allegedly independent websites, you have allegedly independent broadcasters, and you have allegedly independent trolls and bots. But you see that they all work together, they all amplify the same messaging, and they all support the Russian government's narrative, and they all attack the Russian government's critics.
One of those who's been named in UK government analysis variously as a Russian bot or a troll is someone with the Twitter handle Ian56789. Up until the 7th of April, he was tweeting continuously about Salisbury, echoing the Russian government's line that the UK was behind the poisoning. Then, after reports of the attack in Duma emerged, he switches seamlessly to pushing Moscow's line on Syria. He's not, in fact, a bot.
Hello.
He's a real person called Ian Schilling. Over Skype, I asked him whether he was, though, a pro-Kremlin troll.
I am not controlled by anybody, anywhere in the world. I do my own thing. I am interested in analysing the evidence of what is going on in these wars. There are no credible journalists anywhere in mainstream media. They lie. They just parrot whatever the government lies on. So the UK government is going to lie all the time because they're up to no good.
But your tweets seem to parrot whatever the Russian government lines are.
Well, because if the Russians are telling the truth about something, I'm going to agree with them because I report the truth.
If you want to check whether you're dealing with a bit of Russian propaganda, there's one phrase that's a dead giveaway: false flag operation. It basically means somebody else did something to make Russia look bad. According to pro-Kremlin Twitter accounts, reinforced by state-run channels and official statements, recent examples include the shooting down of MH17 in Ukraine and, of course, the poisoning of Sergei and Yulia Skripal with a military-grade nerve agent. Russia has floated more than 20 theories for what happened in Salisbury. They include the Brits did it to distract from Brexit, or maybe it was the Czechs, or the Slovaks, or possibly the Swedes. All states engage in strategic communications. Call it PR if you like, or propaganda if you prefer. Now, traditionally, this involves trying to get people to believe that your version of events is indeed the truth. Но в последнее время Москва пытается делать, кажется, что-то немножко другое. Вместо того, чтобы убедить людей верить в Москву, they're trying to get people to trust nobody. Another weapon in Moscow's propaganda arsenal is a method known as whataboutism. Here's how it works. You say you have intelligence that Russia used a chemical weapon in Salisbury? Well, what about Iraq? One narrative is effectively neutralised by another, apparently unrelated objection. A collection of British academics, known as the Working Group on Syria Propaganda and Media, was last week accused of being Assad apologists and spreading Russian propaganda. Tara McCormack is a member of the group. Among her many media appearances, she's a regular commentator on RT. Do you think that the Russians fabricate stuff, make up nonsense stories and feed them into the bloodstream to try and confuse people?
Yes.
So do we need to be worried about that?
Well, I think that also we do that too. So we need to think about that. And I'm going to say the best word. That was exactly what happened in Iraq. We talk about fake news. The kind of dodgy dossier, as it became known, the claim of 45 minutes, that is the most astonishing case of fake news you could have.
Some people would call you a useful idiot.
Yes, I know. Well, that's fine. But I think if asking for evidence and due process and caution is to be a useful idiot, I think that says much more about the accusers than about me. And indeed, almost to ask for them, and I have experienced this, is to be dismissed as a traitor. So, well, no, I'm sorry, I actually thought that was quite an important part of British democracy.
One of the hallmarks of a healthy democracy is a robust and open exchange of ideas. We may disagree, but our disagreements are based on a set of commonly accepted facts. But what happens to a society when, amid an avalanche of information online, the boundaries between truth and fiction become blurred?
I think the public space is being eroded because of the amount of anonymous communication that we receive. when you know who's speaking or from whom your letter came, or even which newspaper you're reading, you have got a certain hold on what's relevant to judging what the content. When it's anonymous, you don't have much hold, and that, I think, is our difficulty, that we have far more content whose origins we do not know. When we get algorithmic distribution of content, I don't see that it is possible for any individual to harness commensurate powers of questioning, because it is coming, as it were, down so many channels from so many sources, so congruent, so convincing.
The Russian government has a very bad track record, not just of getting things wrong, but of being caught falsifying the evidence. The purpose really seems to be to confuse people, to overwhelm them with so many different theories that they'll actually give up.
We've entered a world of confirmation bias. With unfettered access to information, we're siloed in our social media bubbles. Where once seeing was believing, now it's the other way round. And here's what the new propagandists of the 21st century have realized: the more we see, the less we understand.
Gabriel Gatehouse there, that was produced by Stuart Denman. Well, look, I'm joined by Alistair Campbell, who was spokesman for Prime Minister Tony Blair, and Peter Pomerantsev, author of Nothing is True and Everything is Possible, The Surreal Heart of the New Russia. Peter, how new is what we're seeing at the moment?
Well, in a way, it's very, very old. In Soviet times, there were whole KGB departments designed to spread what was known as active measures, or disinformation, which was exactly that, to spread sort of hoaxes and fakes into the Western media. So in a way, what the Russians are doing draws on a very old tradition, and it's a tradition that, you know, every kind of like psyop in the world, every military has. I wouldn't say it's even unique to Russia. But kind of what's happened now is, as your excellent reports, I think, kind of accentuated, sort of new media has made it much easier to do. There's some sort of philosophical mood where people feel very relativistic at the moment. On the one hand, on the other hand, kind of approach to things has reached a sort of absurdity where people can't seem to agree on anything anymore. So you're having this kind of like weird mix of a foreign power using disinformation, new media, and a kind of weird mood in society.
Yeah, did you agree with that, Alistair Campbell, that we are in a strange time, and it's not just the Russians? It's fueled by a lot of other things, particularly the...
I think the Russians were onto this much faster. And I think they were onto it from the perspective that it could benefit them, and the whole concept of hybrid warfare that certainly our intelligence agencies and military have been talking about for some time, I think felt that we were very much behind the game. I think the other thing, which wasn't in the programme, I understand why, but I think that your opening item this evening about Trump, I think having Putin operating the way that he does, but also now having an American president who feels no compunction about lying whatever. Also here, having had Brexit, frankly, won by an awful lot of lying, and the liars then promoted to very senior positions. So I know you don't.
Yeah,
talk
no,
about
no,
Brexit,
I don't want to get annoyed about Brexit.
Well,
obviously,
but I think it's part of the same thing. I think what's happening is that, and we're also you used the word about being polarised. We're all driven, and Mrs. O'Neill there talking about the algorithmisation of life. We're all driven further and further into our own little concentric bubbles. Where
the echo chambers, so-called. Yeah. Peter, does it matter, though? I mean, if anyone wants the truth, all right, you can watch the BBC, read the Guardian, the Telegraph, the Times, and you will know what you're getting. You don't have to look at unsourced rubbish on the internet. I mean, you know, it takes a modicum of sort of information hygiene protects you against this, doesn't it?
I don't know. I think you know, I think, why would anybody want the facts? Facts are terribly unpleasant. Facts tell you mostly that you're going to die, that you're not as successful as you want to be. They usually tell you very negative things.
It plays to our fantasy.
Reality is not very pleasant. Exactly. If you can escape into a fantasy of confirmation bias, of a world where you hear exactly what you want, you will. And think about why we go online. We don't go online to get the truth. We go there, especially to social media, for kind of, you know, a bit of an ego boost from likes and shares. And actually you get more likes and shares the more polarised you are. There's a lot of studies about that. You're not going there for the truth. You're going there for a fantastic narcissistic experience.
People would prefer to know that if they're seeing something that they can believe it. But I think it is really difficult now that, so for example, when you look at Duma and what happened there, I mean, there were reports on Russian television, interviews with Russian military in front of incidents that our military was saying did happen and they were saying nothing ever happened. How can you actually work out what is true? So in a sense, you're forced to take sides.
Yeah. Alistair, I know I'm going to ask the question that the entire audience is thinking.
How do you know what they're thinking? they're probably thinking, why didn't he want him to talk about Brexit?
No. Did the old political establishment, let's not just talk about Iraq for the moment, did the old political establishment, of which you were such a big part in communication terms, did you create a hostile environment to truth over many, many years that, if you like, laid a groundwork in which the political establishment had very little trust capital in the bank?
I really don't think so, no. I think that if you look at the whole time that I was doing the job with Tony Blair, I think that the reason it became so controversial was because actually the media was changing so fast. The media landscape was changing out of all recognition.
Did you ever lie? Did you ever tell a direct lie?
No.
Never told a direct lie?
No.
I know that you don't think you lied on Iraq, but you never told a direct lie to the media?
No, because when I was doing briefings, for example, I felt the same pressure that Tony Blair felt when he was at the dispatch.
Did you exaggerate?
You sometimes didn't say everything the journalists wanted you to. You sometimes didn't ask questions. Yeah, the guy who said economical with the truth, who got lacerated for it, Robert Armstrong, he actually was telling the truth about how most of us operate, including, may I say, the media. And let me just make this point, Evan. I do think that the real corrosion of trust has come from the fact that most spin these days actually comes from journalists. And now that's ventilated.
Well, journalists are allowed to spin,
ventilated,
and they're
that's
held
now
to account for
ventilated
what
by
they say.
social media where everybody can do the same.
Don't blame everybody else. I mean, do you at least agree, because this is the one that came, I think, very strongly out of the piece, is that when people are asked, you're telling a lie about Litvinenko, they say, what about Iraq? Do you agree that at the very least, your dodgy dossier created a credibility gap for Western institutions?
You say don't blame, but the fact that, for example, there have been 5 inquiries.
This is the bit I didn't want to get into. Do you think those inquiries persuaded anyone? Is that, I suppose, my question? Do you really think that the inquiries have laid it to rest, or do you accept that actually trust...
For those who don't want to believe, no, they haven't. But that's because you don't want to believe.
Peter, help us out on this. I mean, what do you think the old political establishment in the West, who I think they always thought they were doing a very good job and were honest kind of people, obviously, like Alistair, have to, play the game a little bit. Did that leave us in a vulnerable to where we are now, do you think?
Look, there's been many, many historical factors, and we all have to deal with the past, and that's incredibly important. It's bracing to be here in Britain in a culture where I see the journalists sort of like interrogating the former political operative in such a great way. Certainly wasn't possible in Russia when I lived there. But listen, my great worry is, I was still like, I think I was at university still when all that happened. I hate to see children in Syria paying the price for some weird English quarrel you're having with each other, which I'm glad you're having it. There are children being killed now. And can we get over this kind of Alistair Campbell problem that quite rightly you're investigating and thinking about what they're going through? Similarly in Ukraine, I don't see why Ukrainians have to pay for Alistair's mistakes.
Should you have made any?
Thank you both very much indeed. Thanks. If anyone from the Russian government is watching, we'd love to have you on the programme at any time to hear your perspective on this.